Hey guys, my name is Rob, and today we're reviewing the Mobapad N1. This is a wireless Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which is also compatible with PC and mobile. Mobapad is a Chinese company that specializes in Switch controllers and accessories, and they actually contacted me to ask if I would be interested in reviewing the N1. As I haven't previously reviewed any of their products, I'm excited to test the N1 out, so let's open it up and check it out. You'll probably notice that the packaging is pretty minimal on the N1, which isn't surprising. This controller is classified as a pro controller, but it's pretty budget friendly, coming in at just $47 on Amazon. As you can see, it's a pretty tight fit inside the box, so definitely cost effective as far as the packaging goes. So we've got the controller, the instruction manual, a bag of accessories, and that's everything. The instruction manual is unfortunately one of those giant fold-out ones, which I personally don't care for, but it does at least have reasonably large font, so it's readable. As far as accessories, we have a 4-way D-pad that can be swapped out with the installed 8-way one, a USB-A to USB-C cable. This is a short, standard, non-braided cable, just meant for charging, and the 2.4 wireless dongle. And then finally we have the controller itself, which is mostly a flat black with a little bit of glossy black at the top of the shell, as well as on the thumbstick rings, and then white for the face button lettering and the logo. Holding this gamepad, the very first thing I notice is the texture of the rear grips. The grips are plastic, there's no rubber coating, but the stippling on the plastic is very aggressive. I know the heavily textured grips are uncomfortable to some people, but I actually really like it, so I think this controller feels great. As far as features, let's start with the face buttons, which Mobapad states are the industry's first liquid silicone buttons. You can read the full description on the bottom of this page, but in short it says these are really good membrane buttons, and honestly that's what they feel like. They feel noticeably less mushy than any other membrane buttons in my collection, so although I much prefer mechanical face buttons, I have to say this isn't a big drawback for me with this particular gamepad. The D-pad on the other hand is mechanical, which I know will be a negative for some people, particularly if you play a lot of fighting games. The N1 comes with this 8-way D-pad installed, but as we saw it does come with a 4-way D-pad as well, and these are very easy to swap out. They just clip into place and can only go on one way. You can see the pin here that marks the top position. I may try the 4-way D-pad with Street Fighter or something during testing, but for now I'm going to leave the 8-way on. The thumbsticks are Hall effects, so no concerns about stick drift, which really is pretty much expected at this point. Of course we'll do some testing with the thumbsticks, but one thing that does stand out to me is that the tension seems a little bit higher than is typical for Hall effect modules, which I like. The other front inputs are the plus and minus buttons, the home button, the capture or screenshot button, and then the settings button, which we'll go over shortly. The shoulder buttons feel good and are very quiet, which I like, and then the triggers feel good to me, but will be an issue for a lot of people. Like many Switch Pro controllers, the N1 does not have analog triggers. I personally am fine with this, especially because these have a super short pull, which is all I really want, but I understand why this would be a negative for many people. Then on the back we have two programmable buttons. These feel really good both in terms of placement and actuation. They're very easy to press and feel super responsive. My only complaint is the same complaint I unfortunately have with the vast majority of Pro controllers, which is that I wish there were more than two of them. These buttons can easily be programmed on the fly. Holding the home button for 2 seconds turns the controller on and off. And by the way, this gamepad has a built-in speaker, which we'll talk more about later, but you do get a little jingle when turning it on and off, so that's fun. Once the gamepad's powered on, hold the settings button for 3 seconds and the bottom indicator light will turn purple. Press the key you want to program, and then whichever rear button you want to program it to, and the indicator light will turn off. That's it, very simple. The N1 also supports macro programming, so you can hold the settings button for 3 seconds, enter whatever combination of inputs you want, and then press M1 or M2 to save the macro recording. You can also clear the rear button programming by holding the setting button to enter programming mode, then just pressing whichever rear button you want to clear. There are a few other things you can do with the settings button. First, you can set turbo by simultaneously pressing the settings button and another input, such as a face button. You can press the same combination a second time to enable auto turbo, meaning you press that button and it will fire continuously until you press it again. And then you can press function plus that button again to disable turbo. You can also hold the settings button and press the left joystick left or right to decrease or increase the turbo rate, cycling between low, medium, and high settings. You can hold settings and move the left joystick up and down to increase and decrease the rumble strength. I'm not actually going to do it here, but you can cycle through input modes by holding plus and minus together for 3 seconds. By default, the N1 connects to a PC in X input mode, but holding these buttons will cycle through X input, D input, and Switch Pro modes in that order. One really interesting thing about this gamepad is if you're connected to a PC in X input or D input mode, whether wired or wireless, it automatically swaps the face button inputs to Xbox mode, meaning A, B, and X, Y are flipped. A lot of controllers have an option to swap the face button layout, but I can't recall ever seeing one that just automatically does it, and personally I like it. I know some people don't like that the input doesn't match the lettering on the buttons, but it's not like I'm looking at the buttons to play anyway. You know what top, bottom, left, and right are supposed to be when you're playing. Again, not actually going to do this right now, but you can also change connection modes by using the D-pad when turning on the N1. If you hold D-pad left while turning on the controller, it will be in Android Bluetooth mode and will be discoverable as the Mobapad N1. If you hold right on the D-pad, it shows up as Xbox wireless controller and will be pairable with an iOS device via Bluetooth. And holding up on the D-pad plus home will put the gamepad in 2.4 GHz wireless mode. To pair with a Switch, you just need to hold the pairing button on top of the controller for 2 seconds and it will connect automatically. While we have the Switch out here, I also just want to point out that the Mobapad N1 does have Amiibo support, and the sensor is right under the logo in the center of the controller. That covers features, connections, and on-the-fly customization, but there are also some additional customization options via the Mobapad mobile app. This is the Mobapad app running on iOS, but it is also available on Android devices. The first thing to point out here is that you can upgrade the controller's firmware via the app, which took quite a while, so I'm going to skip through that here. Once that's done, we're going to go into the configuration tab and click edit on the current configuration. Then we have a few sub-tabs here, and the first one is joysticks. There's not a ton you can edit, but we do have the two most important options, that being the dead zone and the response curve, so that's good to see. I am going to go ahead and set the dead zones to 0 on both sticks, but not going to touch the response curves. It's a little odd that there's a separate page for each of the sticks, but it shows the response curves for both sticks on both pages. The next tab is for turbo, and this is fine, but there's nothing here that you can't set on the controller itself without utilizing the app. The third tab is for remapping. This is probably the most important customization benefit of the app. Here you can reprogram every button on the controller with the exception of home, capture, and settings, whereas on the gamepad itself you can only program the rear buttons. The next tab is for sound, and here you can actually edit the power on and off sounds that we played earlier. If you click on edit, it pulls up this screen, which I just did not feel like trying to figure out in the moment, but clearly it's super customizable. It's a small thing, but it is very unique. The last tab is titled Other, and this just has vibration settings, which you can set independently for left and right sides, and then also the auto shut-off timer. When you click back, it will ask you to name and save the configuration. That covers the main points of the app, but if you're interested in the sound customization options, you can click on the official and player sharing tabs to find additional sounds to use on the N1 HD speakers. Again, not something I'm going to mess with myself, I'm just too lazy for it, but I'm sure some people out there have had way too much fun with this. Next, let's take a look at Gamepad Tester, and as you can see here, the sticks aren't bouncing back to an absolute perfect resting position, and this is with dead zone set to 0. It's pretty close. I don't expect this will result in any drift, we'll see, but I do want to point out that as far as I can tell, there's no way to calibrate these sticks. It's definitely not in the manual, and I tried some of the more common ways of getting into calibration mode and didn't have any luck. As far as the circularity, you can see here that these are definitely set to a circular algorithm, and that's another setting that we don't have in the Mobapad app. This can't be changed to rectangular, which is fine. If you're only going to have one or the other, I'd prefer the circular algorithm, but it would be nice if we had the option to adjust this. As with most Hall Effect sticks, we have a very low error rate and even shading, so these look fine. While we're on the sticks, we'll also take a look at the resolution, which is also just kind of average. We get 242 resolution points, which is not a super high resolution compared to some of the more high-end Pro controllers we've seen lately that are in the thousands, but it is still much better than some. There are a lot of gamepads out there, including some that we've reviewed on this channel, that are just around the 100 point mark or even a little lower, so this isn't a bad result, particularly for a cost-effective controller like the N1. Next, we'll look at polling rate, and this is a little strange. I did the wired polling rate first, which came back at 500 Hz. Then I tested the wireless polling rate, and it comes back at 1000. This seemed pretty odd to me, so I did run both tests multiple times, and also ran the wired test in D-input and Switch Pro modes, where it actually came back slower at 250 and 125 Hz respectively, but X-input and wireless mode is consistently coming back at 1000 Hz, and wired mode is getting 500. This is a very odd result, but apparently the Mobapad N1 gets faster report rate wireless, at least on PC. So conclusions. First things first, I actually love the way this controller feels. It is a very similar design to the first-party Nintendo Switch Pro controller, but the biggest difference here is that the grips are just a little bit wider at the bottom, which for me makes the controller more comfortable. It actually feels even more similar to the Big One Blitz 2, which admittedly is probably why I'm so happy with the feel of the controller. The Blitz 2 has been my most used controller over the past couple of months, so I might be a little biased in terms of the comfort factor, but again I have to say I think that the N1 HD feels great. As far as performance goes, this video's title kind of says it all. This thing is a better Switch Pro controller. It does everything the first party controller does, including 6-axis gyro and Amiibo support, but overall performs better and includes two rear buttons that work as either single inputs or macros. If I were looking to buy a controller specifically for the Switch, the Mobapad N1 HD would be a solid choice. That said, if we're looking at PC gaming, it can't quite compete with some of the more premium controllers on the market for a couple of reasons. One, though I appreciate that the liquid silicone face buttons are noticeably better than a lot of membrane buttons, mechanical buttons are almost a must for me at this point. I can also live with the triggers since they do have a very short pull, so are suitable for FPS games, which is primarily what I play, but I'd be much happier with mechanical triggers like on the previously mentioned Blitz 2, or mouse click trigger locks like we have on all of the top controllers currently on the market. I also just can't imagine that I'll ever again main a PC controller with less than 4 additional mappable inputs, and preferably I want keyboard mapping as well, neither of which you get with the N1 HD. That said, if you're in the market for a comfortable Switch gamepad with a little more to offer than the first party option and at a lower price point, the Mobapad N1 HD might be what you're looking for. I hope this video helped you out, and if so, please subscribe if you haven't already. Likes are also appreciated, and I do try to react and respond to as many comments as possible. I'll be doing more reviews regularly, so I hope to see you back here again soon. Thanks for watching.